Both our first reading today and our second reading, you get the sense that both Habakkuk from the first reading and Timothy from our second reading, they're two people who are experiencing suffering. Habakkuk, in our first reading, we see how he's walking around Jerusalem, and he sees violence, he sees misery, he sees ruin, and he's burdened by it, of course. And he cries out to God saying, "Why are you letting this happen? Why haven't you intervened yet?" I think we can all relate to asking God that question at one point in our life or another, perhaps even right now. Lord, why are you letting this happen? Why are you not intervening here? And then you have Timothy, who's a young leader who loves the Lord, but he's struggling. His struggle is more not on the kind of macro out there thing. Timothy's struggle is more kind of the day-to-day discouragement in which he's feeling. He's slipped into fear, more specifically. And so what I want to do is just look at Paul's letter to Timothy. We heard from 5 verses, and I just want to look at 2 of those verses. And again, this is one of those homilies, one of those readings where the message is so simple, but it's so important for us to hear, to listen to, especially if we're in a spot of either Habakkuk, where it's like, Lord, why is this happening? Or we're in Timothy, where it's more of just like that interior discouragement and fear. We hear Paul say in these 2 verses, the need to stir the flame, and then secondly, the need to tap into the Spirit. And so to get at this first one, just think for a minute how important momentum is in sports, and how when a basketball team goes on a 12-0 run, what does the other coach on the opposing team do? He calls a timeout. And I love whether it's on ESPN or all the times, or sometimes they'll have the coach mic'd up, and I'm always, especially in those momentum runs, when it's a 12-0 run, what the coach says to the players. Or rather, what he doesn't say. He's not doing the X and O's. He kind of gets up close. Fans are screaming if it's the visiting arena. And he's just like, take a breath. You've got this. Just so simple, and just really, it's just to remember and just to pause to try to change the momentum. We know this. When life gets hard and maybe there's worry, there's anxiety, anxiousness, that momentum can be that snowball. And when that all takes place, when we're in a season like that in our life, it's not uncommon for our faith to fade out, to glimmer a little bit. And this is where Paul here says to Timothy in verse 6, the first verse we heard, I remind you, Timothy, put your name in there. I remind you, Mark, to stir into flame the gift of God that you have. It's so simple. Timothy needs to hear it, though. Paul knows it. Timothy, you've been called to this. The number of times, like whether it's in the confessional or in my office, and maybe a parent comes in to see me and they're struggling, or they express in the confessional of, just being in the grind with little kids, or maybe it's older kids and navigating that in the struggle. How I just give a word of, you've been called to be a mom. You've been called to be a dad, or called to, not uncommon for just that phrase to be a freeing, liberating thing. Just remembering, okay, you've been called to this. God is with you. There was the psalm the other day on Tuesday that the church gave us, the line that this church had us repeat at daily mass four times was simply, God is with us. Not a bad thing to repeat. You could do far worse than repeating that over and over again when you're in a season of either Habakkuk, why is this happening to me? Or Timothy, where it's a season of discouragement and you slipped into fear. God is with me. God is with me. God is with me. Something so small, but see that as being the thing that Paul is telling Timothy, stir the flame. The flame's there. Stir it, blow into it. Something even, God is with me. God is with me. And then the next verse there, Paul is speaking in specifically into Timothy's fear. There's other times in the letter that we know Paul speaking into the timidity in Timothy. And you get a sense that Timothy's being ruled by this. And, fear, as we know, is really powerful. It is a very common and strong tactic that the evil one uses to kind of create strongholds in our mind, to keep us as prisoners. You remember last Lent when I used that image of St. Anthony of the desert with the demons there, and one of them up at St. Anthony's head just kind of clawing at the mind? It does not take much to have strongholds placed in our minds with fear to keep us prisoners. And then what that does, and I think this is what Paul is sensing out in Timothy, what that does, it takes us away from our mission. It takes us away what God is calling us to do. I'm worried about this and that. What if this happens? And the next thing you know it, the boots on the ground, my kids in front of me, my family in front of me, my job, whatever it might be, it becomes very hard for me to even accomplish these day-to-day tasks, which is exactly what the evil one wants to happen. Prisoners. We become prisoners in the mind. So listen to how Paul addresses this to Timothy. For God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather of power and love and self-control. How might your heart be different? How might your home be different if your heart wasn't marked by like panic or fear, but rather if it was marked by like a calm courage, the spirit of power and love and self-control? God did not give you, Timothy, a spirit of cowardice as you have to accomplish these tasks, but rather a spirit of power. What does that mean? That means that whatever comes, whether it's sickness, it's death in a family, it's persecution, come what may, I have power in me, the Spirit of God in me. I will have strength to confront it, to deal with it when I tap into the Spirit of God that's in me and His power. God, Timothy, did not give you a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of love. St. Catherine of Siena, when she was writing about love, and when she was writing about fear, and specifically its power, she says, those are afraid who think they are alone. Those are afraid who think they are alone. It goes back again to God is with me. God is with me. Timothy, God did not give you a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of self-control. Other translations there, it's wisdom. That means in the midst of a very confusing world, with the Spirit of God, you'll be able to navigate it, come what may. Come what may. There's so much to be afraid about. Increased violence, even more so it seems religious in nature. Raising children today, artificial intelligence and what that might mean for my job. And there is so many things to be afraid of. If this happens, if that happens, they are endless prisons and strongholds that the evil one uses and wants us to be in to keep us from the mission, to keep us from our vocation, to keep us from what he wants us to do. So perhaps pull these verses out, these two verses, Second Timothy chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. Perhaps commit them to memory. Mark, put your name in there. God did not give you a spirit of cowardice, but rather of power and love and self-control. So when you're suffering like perhaps Habakkuk, looking around saying, why is this happening? Why are you letting this happen? Why have you not intervened? Or you're suffering like Timothy with fear and discouragement that maybe start to creep in and it's just become this momentum. Remember Paul here. These two verses, fan the flame and tap into the Spirit.